I want to take some time to focus on an area that most people avoid. Most of us only think of stocks when considering investments, but bonds are another area where you can make money. Similar to stocks, bonds can be purchased through a broker and is one of the ways you can make extra income. What are bonds? In simple terms, bonds are a form of debt that you and I can invest. Borrowers such as corporations, local governments, or national governments issue bonds as a way to borrow money to fund their operations. They are held for a specified period, at the end of which the organization which issued the bond repay whoever owns the bond. The end of the period is known as the date of maturity. In the period between the issue date and maturity date, some issuers pay the holder interest, usually twice a year. For others, the payment is all done at the maturity date. I should also point out that once the bond is purchased, it can be resold again and again until the date of maturity. It is therefore common for the final repayment to be made to different bondholders from the original bondholders. Types of bonds. There are various types of bonds that you can invest in. Some are issued by the government and some by corporations. Callable bonds. This is another special type of bond that gives the issuer of the bond the option to recall their bond by paying the current price plus a penalty fee. This is usually done when the interest has dropped to such an extent that the penalties are less than the amount saved by issuing bonds at the lower interest rate. Convertible bonds. These are issued by corporations but are special in that the bondholder or investor in the bond has the option to exchange the bond for a given number of shares of stock. These can be extremely profitable if the stock price rises between the issued date and maturity date. Corporate bonds. As shown by the name, these are bonds that are issued by corporations. Here you can find all sorts of bonds that differ in rates and risk. These are private entities, so the risk for default is always there. You therefore need to understand the corporation issuing it and any future prospects if you can. If you are not sure, then it is advisable to contact a financial advisor before you commit yourself. Coupon bonds. This is where the issuer makes several payments, coupons, over the course of the life of the bond. The last payment being made upon maturity. This is different from most bonds where the total is paid on maturity. Government bonds. These are issued by governments. The period from issue to maturity can be anything from days to even 30 years. These are considered very safe, so your focus should be on the interest to be earned. The other benefit of government bonds is that they could be exempt from tax in some jurisdictions. Junk bonds. Bonds are called junk when there is a high risk of default. Because of this higher risk, these bonds attract very high interest rates. Potable bonds. In the case of potable bonds, the investor has the option to force the issuer to repay the value of the bond minus a penalty. An example would be a situation where interest rates rise so much that your funds stuck in the bonds could be better used in buying other higher rate bonds. The investor will need to compare the higher interest to be earned in buying new bonds with the penalty he or she will pay.